Welcome to TGS, Transform, Grow, Succeed. And this podcast is about your work as a caring professional and the ideas that we can share to elevate and expand what we do to ensure that all of those that we serve get the very best of what we have to offer. My name is Dr. Tim Gravoy, Executive Director of TGS Educational Consulting. And I'm excited to introduce Megg Thompson, a former kindergarten teacher of 10 years, to the show today. Megg is a certified behavior consultant and a life coach working with children, adults, and families. Megg's also the founder of Megg Thompson Behavior Consulting. And to get to where she is today, she's interned with the nationally acclaimed child development expert, Bev Boss. And that really is a really hot to trot name to know for sure, and in this space for sure. At the Roseville Community School in Roseville, California, while getting your master's degree in early childhood education from the University of New Hampshire. And through all of these experiences, Megg's adopted a proactive and strengths-based approach to behavior and uses this model to help all children and adults find success and empowerment through their natural design. She spends her days in both public and private schools, early learning centers, preschools, and homes, helping children of all ages be the very best that they can be. And she's also a children's book author, as a matter of fact. You can check out Scoot and Newton books to find out all about Scoot and Newton's grand adventures. And you can also find Megg Thompson at meggthompson.com and at Megg Thompson Behavior on Instagram, an account that, by the way, I follow as well and learn tons from every single time I get one of your posts, Megg. So, you're welcome. And first off, Megg, I just want to make sure, did I get that right?
You did. And remember, Megg is 2 G's.
Excellent. Thank you. Megg with 2 G's. That actually is very important because Megg 2 G's Thompson.com and then Megg 2 G's Thompson Behavior on Instagram. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you were mentioning before we started recording, who knows where Megg with 1 G takes you?
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. You know what? Someday I should Google it and find out where I go.
Well, if it's something fun, definitely we'll come on with it.
Right?
Here we go. Well, Megg, I'm just wondering then, could you just tell me about yourself and maybe a bit about your journey from kindergarten teacher to behavior consultant?
Yeah, so I didn't even go to school for education until I got my master's in education, but I was a really good babysitter. And I went and got my first job. I taught kindergarten in a childcare setting, which everybody goes, if I say I taught kindergarten, they go, oh. And I say in a childcare setting, and they go, oh. And I was like, that doesn't make it worse. But in the education field, early childhood is the one most looked upon, down upon. So I taught kindergarten for 10 years, and I was really good with I'm putting this in quotation marks, hard kids. Mm-hmm. And now come to find out it was probably a lot of the neurodiverse kids, right? So I was really good with them, and I thought I should probably leave education in a teaching setting and go outside of what I'm doing right now and fall into just working with those kids that everybody finds tricky. And that is how I interned. I hung out with Bev Boss in California, and Bev Boss was actually the one on year 2 that got me to go from a fear-based approach in behavior to a love-based approach. And I was like, oh, wait, you don't have to do stickers, tickets, tokens, points, clips, and candy. So then I took the 8 years to teach myself how to do it with kids in a classroom setting. And then it's just built from there. So now I like you said, I hang out with and it was just kids with challenging behaviors. Now it's mostly neurodiverse kids, right? Today I talked to a family with an autistic boy, went to an autistic home visit with an autistic boy, and I have autism, and then tomorrow, and then Thursday I have ADHD. So I have and I started my morning making sure an autistic 21-year-old man didn't want to hurt himself this morning, and he felt better, right? So it went from challenging behaviors to now, hey, a lot of that challenging behavior is actually a neurodiverse brain, right? And it seems challenging to us, but maybe because we have to solve that double empathy problem, where neurotypical kids know about neurodivergent kids and neurodivergent kids know about neurotypical kids, right? So the empathy grows and strengthens. And I work all over the place. So I own my own business. So I work in any school that I would love all schools to be hey, let's do something different. Although you can't hire me for all schools, but between you and me, Tim, maybe.
Well, I don't know. It would be certainly more than one or two. That's for sure when it comes down
Right,
to it.
exactly.
And
Right.
so you said something I would love to just explore. Can you tell me a little bit more about fear-based approaches versus love-based approaches, and perhaps a little bit about why would stickers, candies, and rewards fall into a fear-based approach?
So all the approaches that are public, usually stickers, tickets, tokens, points, clips, and candy approaches are public. Most public, almost all public approaches end in shame, guilt, and embarrassment. So if you can Google on Pinterest behavior management strategies, you're doing it wrong, right? And even when I've looked at PBIS, like I've read PBIS research, which is actually almost impossible to find. Oh, you could probably send me some. But when I read it, there's nowhere in there that says anything about reward systems, right? Because when you are doing these strategies reward system wise, I'm going to do this to get this, and they're compliance based, right? And in the neurodiverse world, that looks like behaviorism or ABA. Kids are feeling poor about themselves. They're attaching their self-worth to that sticker or that piece of candy, or I'm not the way I am, or who I am, or what I think, or what I do is not good enough, and it has to be a different way. And so it's because it ends in shame, guilt, and embarrassment, and self-acceptance, lack of self-acceptance ends up being a goal. Not that we do it on purpose, right? That's fear-based. So love-based strategies, all my strategies are love-based. So if they don't work and the kid doesn't like them, or you end up not liking them, you can just take them out of the toolbox and put them aside, and you don't have to feel bad, and you don't have to be like, right, I would hate to be the kindergarten teacher that the child talks about when they're 50 because it was this terrible experience they had because of, and I did for 2 years, I did use stickers, tickets, tokens, points, clips, and candy. I did use the stoplight system.
A lot of people did. A lot of people do.
And I think if you didn't, I love listening to people who came out of it that did use it, because you know what? That's what I was taught in school. I was taught ABA for autistic kids in school. I was taught all those Pinterest systems in school. That's what they taught me in my master's program. So that's what I used because that's what I was taught. I remember giving a boy, he had to get, it was a little sticker or like a check or something. I don't remember what the medium was. Every 15 minutes. First of all, I have drunk squirrels. So every 15 minutes, I promise you it wasn't not every 15 minutes. It was like 15 minutes, half an hour, 40. So
the best we could, you know.
Right. So yeah. He was doing great. And then he didn't do great. Yeah. And he ended up not getting a sticker. And I ruined our relationship with just that one interaction. And you know what the prize was? It's so embarrassing. The prize was a laminated picture, colored picture of a motorcycle.
That you could get a picture of something that you liked, and then that's what it was. And we were willing to.
Your mom could print
dynamite a relationship over something I would have given to him for free. You know, when it
right. And it's embarrassing to say that, but the rest of the year I tried to get him back in my good graces, and he would not have it. And I was like, and he is the one that taught me the lesson. He's the one that cracked me, and then that was happening the same time I had first been introduced to Bev Boss.
Yeah, and so it kind of came that you have just an amazing figure in early childhood show up in your life in Bev Boss. For goodness sakes, you're just a delicious opportunity, and then you also just have this real experience of essentially. It sounds like what you're doing is essentially a token board. You know, that there was some kind of thing to fill.
He behaved. What I saw was behaving every 15 minutes. Right, there's judgment attached to that. That I am the one who would decide to give him it or not, and he didn't have any sort of he didn't have a say in it. He didn't get to say like, hey, but I worked really hard, and even though I did hit one kid, I wanted to hit 4. Yeah. And I did hit the other 3, but he did. I have something called the match game now, so the match game looks like is the alternative to that.
Well, actually, I think that would be a really neat thing. I'm going to ask you about the match game in a second, because it sounds like then as we think about a lot of those strategies are still very, very common. We talk about like the ABA as being a very common approach to behavior management for folks with autism. Right. But to be blunt, like the ABA flavored practices show up all over the place in traditional PBIS frameworks. They're
it's trickled down to neurotypical kids now,
yeah,
right?
It's absolutely everywhere. Especially when we start thinking about, just more targeted behavior interventions that are at the individual or even small group level. There's just things that are very tracked in very ABA style with lots of observations and points and things like that. And it's one of those things too, where it sounds like what I'm hearing is that the reason why things that at first might even seem positive, that we're gonna, hey, do something good, we're gonna give you a point. Do something good, we'll give you a ticket. Do something good, we'll give you a sticker. All of those things can sound like they're positive. So how at all could they be fear-based? And it sounds like because we're not really paying attention to what happens when we withhold that we really are creating a system where we are teaching students something that we probably don't want to be teaching them. Am I kind of paraphrasing accurately?
Yeah. So, right, we're not chasing the why. Why is that behavior happening? We're saying, I just need you to do this. And if you do this, I give you something. But some kids don't understand how to do it, right? 98% of the time, a challenging behavior is a lack of skill or an unmet need. So you have to teach skills and meet needs, and then use our two best friends of time and patience. And it's very tricky because none of those reward systems are trauma informed. So no child with trauma should ever be put under that. And I've taken a lot of kids with trauma in their background off those systems. And or they neuroaffirming, because it just doesn't, right? It's, I need you to do these things, but those things make you mask or make you go into meltdown or overwhelm you or overstimulate you by temperament, by who you are as a human, how your natural design is, or if you have a neurodivergent brain or if you have trauma in the background. So how do you know? There are plenty of 5, 6-year-olds that haven't been diagnosed, or we don't know their trauma or how impactful it's been. Or so then you're like, well, right, I have a lot of teachers that say, well, I don't have any kids with trauma or neurodiverse kids in my classroom.
Right, yeah.
I think that's 0% of the class.
The data perspective, that can't be true, right? I mean, we're thinking
no, right, it can't be true.
You have an ADHD diagnosis. Those are just the ones we know about. 11%, for goodness sake. That's 1 in 10. It's like just from that, we think that wouldn't even make sense, right?
No, right.
And it's one of those things too, where when we think about things like check and check out is a very common PBIS intervention at tier 2. It's essentially like the way it's currently formatted now. If you can imagine, especially at the middle and high school level, right? It essentially says to this middle or high school youth that, hey, you're going to have regularly scheduled opportunities to talk to your teacher about the times that you failed to be perfect in all 3 of our school values. It's like, I just can't imagine why students would, not feel super great about buying into something like that.
Can't wait to join that.
Well, exactly. It's just been this perennially awful thing and just giant trouble that even big PBIS has to admit that engagement at middle and high school is really tricky for all of those reasons. And just the idea of, well, what if we just focus on having good conversations with kids? Like, what if we just don't even have them we're not even tracking student behavior anymore. We're just tracking how we respond to it. And, that might be, we already know that's more effective. But that's right now, there's just a complete lack of interest in folks that
takes too much time is what I hear. Pardon? It takes too much. They say it takes too much time. I was like, well, you got to do it proactively or reactively. Reactively, I promise, is harder and takes more time. And there's a lot of big emotions, right, stewing over there. Proactively is better.
Yeah, you're gonna have a conversation anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
One way or the other is happening. It's just, how do you want to feel when you're having it, and really focusing on the teacher's needs at that point too. But I do agree with you though. It's just like, I think it was, you're talking about you're on there was a student who was on a reward system every 15 minutes. Like, I don't know anyone alive in a classroom that could possibly do that. Unless it's like a dedicated paraprofessional just for that child. But even then, I'd rather them be doing something else. So so that makes sense why all of those would kind of be fear-based, because it's all like contingent. There's like a contingency.
Yeah.
Like, if this, then that, and even if the thing we get is good, and we're trying to reinforce positive behavior, the fear of loss is still quite a bit of, unfortunately, the motivator here. And that's not.
Well, if you don't get the reward, then it's a punishment.
Yeah,
right?
basically.
Reward is just the punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then let's flip this then. When we think about then those love-based strategies, how what does that look like? Like what do we replace the sticker chart with?
So, right. So everybody asked me this, and because I'm the behavior girl, right? They're like, okay, so if I'm not, and usually it's in a snarky way, I could tell the snarkiness coming through the comments. Well, what do I do instead? Right, with the
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's the wrong question. Because when you ask me that, what do I do instead? Not you, but I mean, like the world asks me that. They want me to give a 2-sentence answer out of all the things I've learned in 15 years, and you probably want it to be another Pinterest strategy. Just go to Pinterest. And I can't sum up. I can, but it won't make any sense because you'll be like, I need more information. So the wrong question is, what do we do instead? The right question is, what new information do I need so I know what to do instead? Okay, and unfortunately for teachers, it's really tricky because the information means you have to sometimes pay for it. Sometimes you have to then go to professional development that's actually worthwhile, because I know that the week before school, all over the teacher pages, I see like, oh, another professional development opportunity I'm never going to use. Yeah. So, right. Or you're going to have to do it on your own time. And people are like, well, I don't want to do that. I was like, I don't have a solution. I mean, I had to pay thousands of dollars for my bachelor's in communications, which I used 0% of. So that was a waste, I guess. My husband builds houses. He has a bachelor's in anthropology. He paid what, $100,000 for that? That doesn't matter. And then in my master's class, I didn't really go into behavior. So I had to learn it all, right? I've been doing 15 years of training and lived experience and figuring this out. And then people don't want to jump into it. So, right, like things like, right, I have a master class, it's 9 hours, and people, and you know what, it's $99. And people like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh yeah, if we're in the business world, Tim, how much would that be for 9 hours? It'd be like $2,500.
Yeah, it is, and it is tricky because really when it comes down to it, there's folks, if a teacher has to pay for it, there's a very clear ceiling, for how
sure.
an individual teacher is going to ever be able to do. But when it comes to who should be paying for it, it's just like districts will tell me all the time that there's no money for PD, and like, oh, there's money for something though, isn't there? So there's definitely money. There's money for, but it's a matter of values and placement and those kinds of things. So
allocation, yeah,
exactly. Like $99 for 9 hours is like, honestly, I don't know if I would ever price something that way, but it's right. Something that certainly would be valuable. But so I think I like the way that you reframe that question. It's not so much about what specific practice to do instead, like to replace an apple with a potato or something. It's not like that. Yeah. But it's more of what can we do to create an entirely new foundation for where any practice of ours is going to grow.
Yeah. Mindset shift.
Yeah, a mindset shift. So I guess perhaps maybe like we ask it a different way. Like if there was a person or two to follow, or an article to read, or a book to buy, or something, or you say what I don't know, where might somebody start?
Okay, so this is the one I always send everybody to. Alfie Kohn, who I want to be his best friend, but he's ducks in a row and I'm a drunk squirrel. So I think I'd be too much for him. I've seen him train. He was actually helped me move away from fear-based systems and strategies. But Alfie Kohn's book, Punished by Rewards.
That's a great book.
And you only have to get through the foreword. If you're not a reader, you'll get through the foreword and be like, whoo.
Honestly, I would agree with that one. With that one, if you just get through the forward, you've kind of got it in terms of the nutshell of everything. And then you've got some real concrete evidence and exposition through the rest. Honestly, this ADHD brain of mine had no problem getting through it. That's for sure. So
that's true. And I've read it and I've listened to it. And then a lot of people will say these reward systems, but but it's real life and they work for adults. And I was like, and they don't. Because Daniel Pink wrote a book called Drive, and it is like the adult version of Alfie Kohn's book. Like if you sell so many whatever, you get to go to Cabo San Lucas. And you're like, yeah. And you're really good till you get to Cabo. And then it falls down and falls apart. And then there are some people that are like, that's too hard, or I don't have the skills to do that. I don't have the
I don't even like Cabo.
I don't even like, I mean, so, I'll go anywhere tropical, so I have people do that back to back because Daniel Pink's book talks a little bit about education. So if you start there and then you're like, oh, well, might as well get the full education piece and go to Alfie Kohn's book. I've read all, I want to say all the ones I know of Alfie Kohn's I've read. And I'm like, yes, because it's not only crazy Meg with the drunk squirrels that wear sparkles telling me in this like fresh, sassy voice, because I get that a lot. It's also somebody who has ducks in a row that has written a book and done all the research. Mm-hmm. So if you don't believe me, you can believe him. Yeah. And don't, if you ever have him, Tim, on your podcast, don't call him Alfie, Kay?
Don't call him Alfie.
No, you have to call him Mr. Kohn because you're not friends yet.
Well, and honestly, I think that makes perfect sense, but that's good to know.
Yes.
That is good.
Yes, because I've had people that I'm like, oh no, did you have him on your podcast? Did you call him Alfie? They were like, yep. I was like,
I honestly appreciate knowing about that boundary ahead of time. I do think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and,
yeah. I guess, what I'd love to do then, if it's all right, is let's one last question I want to maybe get into a bit, and then let's take a break. Okay. So I'm a fan of Alfie Kohn. I'm absolutely a fan of Daniel Pink's and Drive, and I've read both. I think they're an absolutely must read for any school leader, instructional leader, classroom teacher, special educator, just because as it turns out, motivation is rather fickle in many respects. Mm-hmm. And when it comes down to it, and kind of the things that we think work only kind of work, and for reasons that we don't really want them to when it comes to it, if at all. But I'm thinking about some other kind of examples that I use in my work that I think are different, and I'm wondering how we might explore it. So one time, I always fill out the surveys, for the feedback surveys for there's a bagel shop that I always go to get bagels for teacher and things like that. If that school's a bagel school, sometimes they're not a bagel school, I go somewhere else. But if you're a bagel school, I go to a bagel shop that's close by, and I get bagels for the staff. And one of those times I said, hey, I always do Veronica's the manager there. So I asked Veronica, hey, I always do the survey, and I always, just tell, about the, just great stuff that your folks did in helping me feed some teachers today. I'm just curious, does it go anywhere? I said, oh yeah, absolutely. Every single time we get one of those, I just read it out to everybody. We put it up on the bulletin board.
I love that.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, how is that then different than a token board?
Because you didn't give them the token beforehand. You didn't say you better do a good job, and if you do, I give you this, whatever. It is, nobody told you to do it. And it was like by your own free will. And they did a good job because it was the job they had to do. What happens if you wrote that and then you found out Veronica is giving them, I don't know, like coupons, and then the coupons can be like an hour off for a longer lunch period, and then would you still want to write that? Because now right now you're thinking like, oh, but you're doing it for something instead of just doing your job and being kind because it's what you need to be doing for a job. And then if you take that away and you're like, okay, no more coupons for you, or you think, well, they just bounce back and do it for nothing. We're finding out that kids don't do that. They won't bounce back and do it for nothing.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I'll talk about is actually a phrase that I stole from an amazing administrator here, is that if we're going to do a ticket, or if we're going to do a sticker, if we're going to do anything tangible at all, then we really need to make sure that it's simply a symbol of the conversation and nothing else. And I'm thinking back to, when I was a principal, that was very important to us as a staff, that we not have a store, that we not, that those tickets not mean anything beyond the positive interaction that they were. I think those have been about 10 years since then. I think that I've grown considerably even since then in terms of how we do this. But I'm kind of reminded of an IEP meeting I was at, where a student with a lot of behavior goals, Auntie was telling us at this meeting that he keeps they're called grizzly tickets, in the same place that he keeps his photo of his biological mom. that to him, they were really treasured. But I'm quite confident that there's no amount of, stickers, pencils, erasers, candy bars that we could have, offered in exchange for those tickets. I don't think there's anything that we could have done that would have been more valuable than simply being seen. And that seems to, that idea of a symbol of a conversation is very different than perhaps a do this so you get this kind of thing.
Yeah, because you went into, instead of the tickets represented a strong relationship being seen, his love language must have fit in there of affirmation maybe, or gifts. And so the relationship, the trust, and your love languages is what was represented there. It just happened to be in a ticket form. And he wasn't going to get rid of the ticket, not because what was he going to get, a pencil?
Nothing.
Three places.
Nothing. At that school, nothing. Absolutely nothing. You don't get anything for the tickets. You just
right. But when you do the usually the prizes are what, from the dollar store, Five Below.
Yeah, exactly. Oriental Trading or something like that. So yeah. They're just, what you could get, for a ticket or two at Peter Piper Pizza or someplace like that, or Chuck E. Cheese. So the value is completely different when it comes down to it. And so I guess I'd love to, let's take a break. And then I think when we come back, what I would love to talk about a bit is that you and I are both highly critical of PBIS. Kind of wondering, just like at what point did you come to understand that there was something problematic here? And then what do you think we need to be doing about it? All right, so let's take a quick break. And when we'll come back, we'll take a look at this more. Are you a parent, teacher, or someone who works with kids? Do you sometimes wonder how to better understand and support the children in your life? Are you helping neurodiverse children and youth to learn and grow? Then you need to check out Megg Thompson on Instagram. At Megg Thompson Behavior, you'll discover a world of tips, strategies, and insights that make managing child behavior easier and more effective. Megg's posts are packed with practical advice, all delivered with a warmth and humor that makes learning enjoyable. Whether you're dealing with challenging behavior, looking for ways to connect more deeply, or just need a little inspiration, Megg has you covered. Her advice has already made a difference for so many parents and educators, but now it's your turn. Head on over to Instagram and follow Megg Thompson Behavior today, because every child deserves to be understood and every adult deserves the tools to make that happen. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. We're here talking with Megg Thompson, who's a certified behavior consultant and an absolute, just a phenomenal content creator on Instagram, just with great things that I follow and look forward to seeing every single day. And I definitely encourage y'all to follow Megg Thompson at Megg 2Gs Thompson Behavior on Instagram, and certainly check out the website too, Megg2GsThompson.com. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is most of the work that I do, slightly more than half, I would say, it involves helping schools implement positive behavior intervention and supports. And one of the things I'm very careful to talk about is that we're going to go about this. If you choose me as your vendor, we're going to be going about this work a very different way.
That's what Tim, I say that too. I warn them, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah,
sure?
Exactly. We can do it. But if the main goal is a store, I am not your guy for that. I'm not. So I think it's really interesting that both you and I are just very highly critical of positive behavior intervention support, or PBIS for short. We made different choices about kind of how we live that critique out loud when it comes to things like, behaviorism or ABA approaches to classroom management. I'm wondering, when did you come to understand that there was something just very much amiss with continuing PBIS in that 60-year-old framework?
So it was when I was getting my master's, I had to take maybe a behavior class. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I remember reading about ABA, and my gut feeling was, ew, that's gross. But I also was 25. Mm-hmm. I also did not have children. I also had not been teaching a long time. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm probably wrong. There's probably something about this that is right. So I'll just keep my mouth shut. And I had to do an oral report on ABA. And I just thought, I don't know. Because if you were to say, hey, Megg, I'll give you a whatever to do this, I'm going to be demand avoidant. I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So I thought, like, what about aren't those? And then my husband would just not do it because he was like, oh my gosh, you're going to call me up and congratulate me in front of all these people. I don't want to do that. So I was realizing that different people didn't like it for different reasons. And I was like, oh, so my gut instinct was right at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And it has since, right? So I graduated in 2000 with my master's in 2005. So it's been 19 years, almost 20 years. And it's the same stuff. And I think, okay, it's the same stuff, yet technology is huge now. We went through COVID. Neurodiversity is now a big thing. It wasn't necessarily then. There's all this new information. How are we still using the same strategies? That doesn't make any sense.
All that we've learned in decades and decades, the fundamentals of this framework are exactly the same.
And there's still, and people say, well, what about? I'm like, what about what? Is it is it like a rhymey name curriculum? If it's a rhymey name curriculum, if it's a red, yellow, green system, if it has the cartoon with the kids with the big heads, like I can spot them. If you tell me about it and you're using ABA jargon, that happened to me the other day, and I was like, I don't know it, but I am guessing it's probably the same thing I've heard over and over again. No, it's not. No, it's not. And they sent me it and I read it and I was like, exactly the same thing. You just put lipstick on a pig, right? So I keep seeing in all these schools, lipstick on a pig, all these different things. And it's all these different systems and like fun games. And right, I just call them behavior games. They're all behavior games and none of them work. It makes people pleasers. And then when I keep hearing, oh, I'm a recovering people pleaser. Well, if you're a recovering one, it means it wasn't good for you.
Yeah, it means it wasn't a good one to start with. And so would you say then that kind of the fundamental, your critique of PBIS just fundamentally really has to do with is it the rewards part of it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, I don't know what PBIS is supposed to look like without the rewards part of it, because I have never, and I use that word very intentionally, I have never been in a school that uses PBIS without reward systems that take over all of the things.
It is one of those things where the reward system of PBIS is the least important part of it, and yet it can become a school's entire personality very quickly. And this is one of the things that I really work hard with schools to not spend so much time on and really worry about. Now, I
don't know what it's supposed to look like.
Pardon?
So I don't know what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I guess I could give you a couple of schools that I've worked with that definitely don't, because they've usually at the outset they don't want to do that, and so they've come up with I think like Orange Grove Middle School, they've got they have monthly celebrations, but they happen not because of behavior really, they happen just because they want to do fun stuff and they just want to make sure they do it every month. So
just do fun stuff to do fun stuff.
Yeah. So you do it just because you just do fun stuff. And just because they want, I mean, I guess they want the tickets to end up somewhere and not on the floor. I guess you can use your tickets to vote for things that you might like. And so I guess it's vaguely a reward, kinda, because you get rewarded with a vote that, to be blunt, nobody cares about and nobody thinks anyone cares about at that school either. So it's just kind of, because they always choose stuff that no matter what someone's going to like. So so there's that one, and but the ticket itself has no value. Like, it just, other than that.
How did they get the ticket? How do they get the ticket?
Yeah, so to get the ticket when a teacher or another student or just note what they would say is they want that ticket to be a symbol of a conversation, and that they're having. It's kind of like it's just that marker of that conversation. And it's just, when they recognize something, what I talk about, and is probably slightly different than they would say, but when we recognize the good that we bring to school, which is just that we're going to keep our eyes open for the good that we bring to school. But it's not meant to be contingent on anything exactly, but it sure can't happen until the action happens, right? Like, it can't happen until we actually see it. Otherwise, we really are just bribing, when it comes down to it. So, so I guess that would be, I think, one example of probably the closest to rewardless that I've seen, and it works just fine. They were actually the first school that I worked with to take check-in, check-out, which is that tier 2 intervention that has lots of hourly check-ins about how bad you were, is essentially the PBIS flavored way. And they would say, oh no, it's not. It's about this, that, and whatever. But fundamentally, I don't know how you can do the mental gymnastics and say, if I'm supposed to take this piece of paper to my next period teacher and have them talk to me about how I was behaving in the last hour, like I don't know how you do that mental gymnastics. But they were the first ones to turn it from an adult-driven goal to something, all right, kiddo, what do you want to do?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, of all of the things that would make your school day, depending on the youth, they could be talking about, hey, what would just help you get through this day with the least amount of ick? With other students, like it could be just different depending on where they're at and what their connection is with the adults there. But the goal really is to say, you know what? I think what I'd like to do is just, maybe get in one or two, problems done on my math because I'm not getting anything done. Like, okay, we'll start there. That's what it's about. How can I show up for you in that goal? What do you need from me? And
right.
Yeah, students are very, very good about telling us what they need from us, as it turns out, if we ask them. And that
Weird,
is,
right?
yeah, well, not at all, really. I mean, yeah, not at all.
Yeah. Oh.
But that really transforms the conversation, right? And it's where it really isn't contingent on what we want; it's contingent on what the youth wants, and somehow we get to a better place anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, so when we think about then like this kind of reward-free way of managing school, it turns out that as long as you're not doing PBIS, an awful lot of us are. And when it comes to PBIS, which is pretty common in schools, it actually is pretty kind of optional in my view. And yet, for whatever reason, tends to be the thing that people get most hung up on in implementation.
Yeah. That's why I don't know what it's supposed to look like or what I've read like the guidelines and what it's how it's supposed to be implemented is what I see in the research. And I was like, but I haven't seen one school that does the supposed to be implemented way. So I see what I think is the wrong way. So I say, okay, then that research doesn't count because it's not the way that it's actually showing up. You're telling me the way it's supposed to show up, but it's not. So what I'm seeing and what I'm reading are two totally different things. So you don't get to say that it's evidence-based because I see evidence that it sucks, right? And I'm, as you know, I'm loud and feisty and I'm sassy about it because when kids' hearts and minds and souls are being hurt and harmed, I come out with like my glass edges really sharp. And I just am like, because I don't want, right? I was joking, like, we're going to be 88 in a nursing home in a bedpan, and I'm going to have to go pee in a bedpan, and I'm going to be sad and whatever. And they'll be like, if you just go in the bedpan, Miss Meg, I'll give you a sticker. That's what's going to happen. And we laugh about it, but that's what's going to happen is we're raising these kids to have contingencies and everything's contingent on something. They're then going to take care of us and we're screwed.
Or even just thinking that, for goodness sakes, just the idea that it's that the good that we bring to school is contingent upon somebody else noticing it. It's just not true, right? It just isn't true.
And if have you ever woken up, right? I had an easy childhood, easy in quotation marks. I did well in school. I love school. I'm a happy person. I don't have any strong mental health concerns. So like I am doing all right. And sometimes I wake up and I'm grumpy and I go to work and I'm like, ugh, and I fake it till I make it because I'm 46 years old and I figured out how to do that. But like, what happens? I work with some kids who like parents hit them or they're vaping because they have ADHD, autism, ODD, anxiety, and depression in their brain. And I was like, yeah, I'd probably vape too. And then like now you get a sticker if you're doing well. That's not even fair. That's like, what?
It's just not even a line. It's like there's just no amount of mental gymnastics that's going to tell me that that isn't that isn't just some form of bribery when it comes down to it, right? So
for sure, yeah, it's all bribery. We just call it something different, or we hear this is the thing that makes me. The kids love it. No, they probably love you because you're a great teacher. They probably love getting things. I mean, I love getting prizes, right? I mean, right? If I go to the thrift store, I'm like, woo, like, right, like, woo, and or the kids love it and it works. Oh, at what cost does it work? There's a big cost if it's working. Kids have either given up, they are people pleasers. There's so many. I've written them all down on my phone because I'm like, oh, that's another reason.
Well,
Because they're just
really, when it comes down to it, too, it's just like if it works, it probably won't work for long. For goodness sakes.
research says 4 to 6 weeks. I've never seen it last 4 to 6 weeks
Yeah.
because every kid will. You know what the problem is? Every kid will try for a little. Okay, so I'm a teacher. It's the here and where I live. It's the first day of school. So the teachers roll this out. They're rolling out desk pets, and which makes me want to poke my eyeballs out. But everybody gets a desk pet. So this time next week, it is working beautifully. I found the thing. It is awesome because all the kids are still on the holiday, right? Of like, hey, this is fun. My friends are in my class. This is great. And then, so behavior's wonderful. She's like, I got a great class. Okay, week 2's a little less. By week 4, she's thinking I have to either make the desk pets bigger, change the whole system, make the little things you get with the tickets for the desk pets less tickets than I have. So she's like, now she's chasing the high that she had of like, I figured this out in week 1. Now I'm going to mix it all up because I need that elation I felt back. And you never get there. And then you're just bribing kids and manipulating kids on the way to getting that elation back.
Yeah.
Because you're not chasing the why. You're not really discovering what's behind the behavior.
Yeah. And I'm all for changing things up if it's not working for you, for sure. But then there's reasons why kind of those extrinsic rewards tokens, clips-based systems will never work for very long. It's just make it kind of real importance, I think, that we consider the possibility that we can get rid of it without any harm whatsoever, that we can safely and briskly move past it and find ourselves in a better place. Well, let's take a break, I think. And when we come back, let's have a final thought from Megg Thompson on just how school leaders and classroom teachers can elevate their practice in this space. My name is Dr. Tim Gravois, and I'm excited to launch our new free self-paced online course that you can take anytime that feels good to you and watch as much of it as feels good to you as well. And it's called PBIS 101, More Than the Basics of Positive Behavior Intervention Support. And it's going to go over the basics of PBIS for sure, but you're going to get even more than that because we're going to talk about the key features of Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, what the difference is between all of those different tiers, what are some best practices in terms of getting started, and what are some things that you can avoid to be the most successful in helping your students become successful learners and successful human beings. Click on the link. It's absolutely free. I can't wait to hear how well this course serves you. Welcome back. It has been absolutely great to talk with you, Megg. Just given all of the ground that we've covered here, I'm wondering what final thought might you have for us?
Okay, so my final thought has to go with what you just said, that like it is okay to change it up and move away from this. And people say, I don't know how to do that. And that's my final thought. This is how you do it. I'm going to give you my number 1 best strategy is you're going to go in if you've always used these systems because it's mandatory for you. First of all, it's mandatory for you. It's not mandatory for the kids because nobody plays a game they don't want to play in a like positive, joyful way, right? You are going to say, you know what, guys? Until this year, we're going to use desk pets to get desk pets. And I'm a teacher, so I'm teaching you, but I also am doing a lot of learning. And I learned that desk pets aren't actually good for you or for me or for the whole class and relationships and trust. And I kind of messed that up and I didn't know, but now I know. And I'd love to talk to you about how we can move past the desk pets, but still do the fun stuff of like pizza parties and movie days, but without people feeling bad. And I just started to learn this. So I'm wondering, what are you guys thinking about it? And then you're just going to leave it. That's the number 1 strategy is admit your piece. I've done this. And you can even say like, they made me do it. And I thought I was going to do it. But if none of you want to play, we don't have to do it. And then what's going to happen? Some kids may want to play. And then you're like, okay. And then you're going to figure that out. You're going to be flexible. You're going to talk about it. I've led many schools through this one strategy. And I think the most amount that the kids still played was December. They made it to Christmas break. And then in January, the kids really thought about it at home and did some, right? I think teachers had given them homework to think about. And so every school I've worked with, when January starts, they've been gone.
And I'll tell you what, just speaking just to all the school leaders and PBIS team leads and all the folks who do these kinds of things, especially if you're on the tier 1 PBIS team that tends to be in charge of the store or whatever it's going to be. If you're paying for PBIS rewards to set up a digital store for you, imagine not paying for it anymore. If you're paying somebody to run a store and collect inventory for it, or even if you're getting donations for the inventory, imagine that you don't have to do that anymore. And now that person gets to actually, I don't know, do vocabulary work with kindergarten students, or help with science fair with 8th grade. If you've got suddenly resources that aren't tied up in something that really isn't worthwhile anyway. And that might be something to consider as we kind of think about, okay, well, what comes next? The most important thing, in my view, is I'm kind of with you, Meg. The most important thing, in my view, is that we just stop the thing that isn't working, and that is going to help us create the blank space we need to discover something that better aligns with our values, I think. Well, thank you very much, Meg, for being here today. I'm just grateful for your time, for just the professional shots that we share, for goodness sakes, and for sharing just your experience with our listeners today. And listeners, I definitely hope you enjoyed our show. I absolutely did, and I hope you reach out to me or to Meg with 2 Gs with your thoughts on the conversation. Well, it's important. It is important. You're not. It
is important.
If you don't get the 2 Gs, you might not.
Meg with 1 G Thompson might be grumpy.
Yeah, exactly. Or I don't know, or delighted that she's got all this attention all of a sudden. Who knows?
Maybe.
So who knows, right? But you can reach Meg at www.megg2gsthompson.com and on Instagram at meggthompsonbehavior. It's on the account. Absolutely encourage all of us to follow it. And until next time, everybody, I absolutely wish that you have many opportunities to be as generous with yourself as you are with those that you serve.